Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, August 4th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Donald Trump pleads not guilty. Jack Smith focusing in on a speedy trial, probably more speedy than Donald Trump wants. Conservative claims that Trump's delusion as a defense will not cut it, and a poll says Republicans will abandon Trump if convicted, but I don't think so. I don't think so. 187,000 jobs added. Good numbers, but the Fed's assault on labor is having its desired effect. And in a rebuff to Alito, Kagan says Congress can, in fact, regulate the Supreme Court. Devin Archer testimony is released, and it destroyed years of Republican Biden crime family lies. Senator Jeff Merkley decries lack of a prominent climate change primary candidate against Joe Biden. The American Academy of Pediatrics backs trans youth care again. It calls for a research review. Jones and Pearson win in a re-election following Tennessee 3 expulsion vote. And a poll, support for additional Ukraine support drops to 45%. Voters in Wisconsin challenge the most gerrymandered maps in the country just a day after a new Supreme Court justice is seated. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Casual Friday. Emma Vigland.
Hello.
You want to weigh in on that?
It is Casual Friday. It's Casual Friday. I got the soft collar on too, so we're melding into one. How about that?
I almost wore a t-shirt today.
Wow.
But so someone's already calling for me to have a conditioner in my hair. It's a little bit fluffy. I mean, it's
Do you
incredibly
use a
humid.
conditioner?
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, you know, I don't have a regimen, but I am getting a haircut this weekend. I just wanted to let everybody know that. So.
All right. Well. I mean,
and get that out of the way.
Good to know.
Juniper J hit 102 degrees in Chile on Tuesday. It's winter there. Yeah, we're gonna take phone calls today. Probably pretty early in the show. Although every time I say that, it ends up being hours later. But I will call into the show right now, and I will tell you that we will open up the voicemail. We'll open up the voicemail a little bit later. So don't bother right at the moment. Let's start with this clip. This happened on Tuesday of this week. Jeff Merkley, senator from Oregon, who at one point I thought, like, you know, there was some talk when there was real, I think, frustration with Chuck Schumer. Merkley was floated as a potential Senate majority leader at that time. But
that would have been nice. He's definitely to the left of Schumer. Yeah.
Here's Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon. Like I say, on Tuesday, bemoaning the fact that that Biden's sort of failures on climate, and there's been successes, but the problem with trying to measure out successes and failures is that that's not going to cut it. we can't have 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Nicely up or down by 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking on this. And here's Jeff Merkley.
Biden need a primary challenger to push him on this issue?
Well, it probably wouldn't hurt if there was an activist who had a very clear reputation and a solid grassroots connection to be in the campaign to be making these points. But realize President Biden at this point really does have the primary tied up. The major environmental groups endorsed early. They were afraid that a challenger would undermine President Biden the way, say, Ted Kennedy's campaign damaged Jimmy Carter's re-election. So labor is already on board. Reproductive rights groups are on board. Major environmental groups are on board. I think what we're seeing now is the president has the primary well in hand. But those climate groups that did that early endorsement, they should go back and say, you don't want just our endorsement. You want our activists knocking on door. You want the sunrise movement of youth to be passionately excited about your campaign. It is pivot now. Say no to any more fossil project.
So there it is. Jeff Merkley basically bemoaning the fact that there is no serious climate primary challenge. Now, of course, Marianne Williamson has very good positions on the climate, but she has no relationship, or I should say institutional relationship or history of having any deep connections with the climate movement. Mm-hmm. And RFK, I mean...
Oh, the free market will solve this? Yeah, that's the climate candidate.
If there was anyone... I mean, what's fascinating about his primary challenge is he's not running at Joe Biden from the left on really anything.
No.
I mean, I suppose one could argue that somehow running, not providing aid to Ukraine is somehow to the left on this issue, but I just don't know that that's really that.
I do not agree.
First of all, it's also arguably a libertarian position. I'm sure Rand Paul would subscribe to this. And so I don't know that Kennedy is doing that from the left per se, to be honest with you. I mean, it's very hard to square that with his, what he considers more aggressive defense of Israel's actions in the occupied territories than he said most Democrats. So, I mean, he's running to the right on that issue of occupation than most Democrats. You could argue that his position on Ukraine is to the left of Biden's, but it's not from a left perspective. It is more from a libertarian perspective. I mean, that has happened. The libertarians and leftists would agree, decriminalize drugs. That doesn't mean that they're both doing it from a leftist perspective. It just means that both these ideologies happen to have it. The problem is what comes with the rest of that libertarian ideology. Like Emma says, he believes that the free market can solve climate change, as if there has been some significant inhibition of the free market, unless he's talking about some fantastical world where there is no, I mean, getting rid of subsidies for fossil fuels, yes. But the fact is, we need to subsidize things like solar, things like wind power.
We need to nationalize the oil and gas industry too. I mean, look, like that's
shut it down,
right? Like to the extent that we like need to approve like certain projects because like we just haven't transitioned off of this stuff so much. It should not be profited by private companies. This should be a like Uncle Sam initiative.
I mean,
the problem. You go ahead.
No, it's just the idea that though he has any real positions that are to the left of Biden that I have seen, I think it's fanciful. It's just like, when you're a record candidate essentially, or you're working with people that are interested in causing chaos in the Democratic Party, you're gonna make the positions of what like the left really stands for as muddled and as as confusing as possible. I mean, like we went through this, let's be real, with the Jimmy Dore, I'm further left than you because of X, Y, and Z. Biden's more fascist than Trump. It makes those words meaningless, and that's part of the agenda. Let's be real.
I mean, I aside from bemoaning the fact that he didn't that Kennedy was not that person who was going to try and push Biden left on climate, or I don't even know I don't even know if you can call that left necessarily, is just sort of more sensibly on climate. I don't have much evidence that Robert Kennedy is running to appeal to leftists or Democrats, for that matter. I mean, his name attracts a lot of Democratic support. I mean, I guess it's around 10 I've seen it as high as 14, 15 points. But it is I am like really hard pressed, outside of, like, I guess you could say good government stuff in in some agencies, but there's no structural reform there. And he doesn't seem to be highlighting those issues either. He doesn't seem to be running a campaign to attract Democratic votes. I mean, I know that he was drafted by Bannon and Stone to be a chaos agent in the Democratic primary, but he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not even doing that.
Well, I know, even the COVID stuff, like that's not even that active in the Republican primary anymore. They all kind of want to move on from that too. And in the Democratic primary, I think it's insane. It's a crazy position to have.
Yeah.
It does not feel like he's running. I mean, I know my assumption too was that, to the extent that Bannon and Stone want him to run, he wants to run it. They want him to run as a chaos agent in the Democratic Party. I don't know what his intentions are, but if I was going to run as a chaos agent in the Democratic Party, I would do the exact opposite of what he's doing. His polls have gone down since he entered the race.
Well, and eventually he'll leave, and I don't know, he'll try to make some sort of pivot. But in terms of a climate candidate, though, just to Merkley's point, to put a bow on it, it really should be somebody who is completely intertwined with someone like the Sunrise Movement, who understands that there's nobody who's going to defeat Biden in a primary at this point. It's a message-driven issue candidate to push him in that direction. And that's why I've been pretty ambivalent to somewhat critical about some of the including Marianne Williamson's campaign, or some stuff that I perceive as kind of vanity campaigns, because if we're going to have primary challenges, I want them pegged to specific issue sets and activist groups, right. Because that is the reality of what the value of a primary challenge is with an incumbent. There's not really a realistic path to overtaking, I would say, the incumbent in the primary. But if you can change the way that candidate approaches certain issues, that's the best path forward, in my opinion.
I would argue that, certainly that's what Bernie entered the campaign in 2016. It caught fire. He didn't think that he had a chance of winning at the beginning of that thing. And then he reacted too late, in my opinion. With all that said, Bernie's 2016 campaign, as much as his 2020 campaign, although I would argue the 2020 campaign as well, both of those campaigns had Joe Biden created a different Joe Biden than existed 20 or 30 years ago. They didn't create a Bernie Sanders in Joe Biden, but you did have a guy who's now, as kludgy as it is, putting into effect a student debt cancellation of about $360 billion, or not sufficient, but certainly a step that I don't think he would have taken without Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. And to some extent as well, Warren. Certainly all the antitrust stuff, a 50 year now shift from where antitrust has been since 1980s is a function of Elizabeth Warren, in that campaign. And so the primary challenges are important even if they don't win. And so it is
But they have to be strategic.
And I think they could still be used by, Gen Z for Change had an activist interrupt a Karine Jean-Pierre press conference and say, hey, respectfully, asking nicely hasn't worked. And that group, Gen Z for Change, used to be TikTok for Biden, and now they're realizing, they were in the news in May saying, hey, it's a hard sell because you're not giving us much.
Right.
And also, Sunrise Movement itself didn't endorse Biden ahead of the election, but said, look, this is the best. We're going to actually put people behind him because this is the only, if Trump wins again, we don't have any actual movement. We can't even pretend like we want to do anything, and we can't even shame him. And I think all those groups I think it's really smart. I think they should withhold the endorsement. I think obviously, ultimately, it's probably going to be Biden, right? But just to hold it open so the news can come back to you. I think the union should do it as well and let these, even though I think we have frankly not great compared to the Bernie primary challenges, we don't have a great crop, at least say hey, we're listening to all the different candidates out there and you have to speak to us, rather than jumping behind Biden right away and now all of a sudden it's nullified.
Make them come to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they should want to have that news story where we're actually giving something away instead of, oh, we have them in our, this is a little bit idealistic, but we have them in our back pocket. We're going to go triangulate with the Republicans now.
We'll have more to say on that, come September when the primary season begins in earnest. In a moment, we're going to be talking about the former president's attempt to essentially launch a coup. We will reiterate the seriousness of that and talk about what it's going to take to convict him, and also what the Republicans are going to be doing to sort of muddy the waters, as it were. First, a word from our sponsor today. This episode of the Majority Report is brought to you by Manukura honey. Now, when I say honey, you probably think of maybe the honey in the bear that you get, or even maybe you get honey the country honey and this and that. No, this Manukura makes Manuka honey. It is, it's honey, but it is so radically different from any other honey that you've ever tried. It's like a super honey. It comes from New Zealand. It's specifically bees that feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree. And they make it's sort of hard to describe. The texture of this honey is it's almost like caramel. Mm-hmm. And the taste of the honey is really unlike anything else you have ever tried. And you use it just like any, regular honey that you would use it. You use it, I don't know, you put it in your tea, you put it on your toast, you put it with peanut butter for your kids' lunch or whatever it is. But Manuka honey is sort of considered sort of like a super honey because it has significantly more MGOs, like a multiple of 20 of, and I guess it's called methyl. I'm not going to screw this up. Glycoxyl. It is a compound found in raw honey. Like I say, there's trace amounts in regular honey. In Manuka honey, the milligrams are off the charts, and it is a natural antibacterial compound, like I say, that essentially only comes from the nectar of this tea tree. The nutrients support optimal immune and digestive health. So it's a honey that you use like you normally do, but the health benefits are significantly greater. It has less carbs and less sugars and more protein than regular honey. The 850 plus, that's the 850 MGO honey. Like I say, it's like caramel, and it's creamy, and it's radically different than any other honey you had. I don't know what else to say about it. You can eat it straight or whatever. But my whole family goes bonkers for it. And if you head to manacora.com/majority and or use the code majority, you're going to automatically get an extra free pack of 850 plus. That's the high MGO honey sticks with the order. That's a $15 value. Great for kids' lunches, a little sweet snack. The honey sticks, I should also say, come in this like compostable stuff. So you can bring them wherever you are. Great for energy for you or your kids, whatever. That's manacora.com/majority, manukora.com/majority. Or use the code majority to get a free pack of compostable honey sticks with your order. I'm telling you, you have not tasted or seen honey like this before. Indulge yourself. Try some honey with superpowers from Manacora. We will put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Also, today's episode brought to you by my favorite sponsor. I mean, all the sponsors are great, but I think everybody knows how much I love sunsetlakesebede.com. Why do I love them so much? It's not just the left is best gets you 20% off of all of their products. It's because I literally use this product every day. I use the tinctures at night to go to sleep. They have 3 different sort of concentrations. They have 3 different flavors. They have some with melatonin, which I also use. They have gummies with melatonin. They have gummies that are just a Sebede. They're delicious. I try not to eat too many of them, but the tinctures at night are huge. Also, they have a salve that is great for your muscles. I use it on my eczema or any type of itches. That's an off-label use. It has arnica in it, so you just don't use it on anything that's like an open cut or anything like that. But I find it's fantastic. They have fudge. They have coffee with Sebede, my weekend brew. They have smokables, keef, pre-rolls, blunts, all with Sebede, and their Sebede is third-party checked. You can see the complete breakdown of what's in there. They use the best farming practices, both integrated pest management, no pesticides in your Sebede. They use regenerative farming practices, so they take care of the land. And most importantly, I think as to why they're my favorite, in addition to their product, is that they're movement partners. They have donated thousands of dollars to strike funds, to carceral reform, to food pantries, to flooding relief up in Vermont. They're located outside of Burlington. They've been helping out other farms. Just a great all-around company. They're mostly employee-owned, $20 minimum wage, sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the coupon code LEFTISBEST, and you get 20% off. Let's get into the Trump. This is a big deal. I mean, I have to say that, we certainly haven't ignored what happened on January 6th, and obviously closer to it, we gave it sufficient coverage, and we talk about, different people have been sent away. There's been a lot of people have been sent to jail at this point for storming the Capitol. But it has been very hard to, and I don't know that you ever really know if it's not successful, or at least in part successful, if you ever really know in these situations how close we were to literally having a coup. And,
there was at least a coup plan.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's also been obscured as just how serious the plan is, right? There was a lot of people who early on, from the far right, the right, and the sort of formally associated with the left, who came out and poo-pooed this whole thing. And you'll hear people today go like, how can you charge Donald Trump with a crime and not charge other presidents with crimes? I think the idea that Barack Obama essentially got the OLC to allow for him to assassinate Americans without a trial. George Bush, the Iraq War, and torture. We could go on and on. And there's no doubt in my mind that we should have held to account past presidents for those things and more. Iran-Contra, Watergate. I mean, these were all very problematic. And the Keating 7, the savings and loan crisis. I mean, there's been a lot of things that we have failed to really fully hold people to account. But because we have done that is not an argument that we should not hold Donald Trump to account. In fact, it's got it flipped. The holding Trump to account, which is obviously, I think, easier for our society than it was to hold these other past presidents to account, should be leveraged to hold future presidents to account. And with that said, what Donald Trump had to do was pretty unique and really struck at the fundamental sort of, I think there's a very strong argument that we don't live in a real democracy, in the sense that, money and power has squeezed out the ability of the average person's sort of desires to be implemented by its government. But one of the primary mechanisms we have, at least to register our dissent, obviously we can protest, but one of the key mechanisms we have to make change in this country, not revolutionary change, but the kind of incremental change that, frankly, for better or for worse, most Americans want, is by voting and by a peaceful transition of power. Mm-hmm. And this is what it spoke to. And I want to read this. I read this the other day, but it really is important to understand just where we got. It's been reported by the committee that looked at January 6th that Donald Trump had appointed Jeffrey Clark, DOJ, acting head of DOJ, for a short period of time, and reversed himself because there was a series of threats of mass resignations.
And this was after Bill Barr resigned, and then someone else, I'm forgetting his name, resigned, right? Before this was the third.
No, not before somebody resigned. Bill Barr resigned, and then there was the acting. It was his name escapes
Jeff
me.
Rosen.
Jeff Rosen.
Yeah.
Jeff Rosen.
Right.
Was acting DOJ, and wait a second. Jeff Rosen, who was the guy that was the fourth quote conspirator? Now I'm confused.
Jeff
That's
Clark.
Jeffrey Clark.
Jeff Clark, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So Jeff Rosen is the acting, and he was going to be replaced with Jeff Clark because Rosen wouldn't go along with Donald Trump's plans. And this is in the indictment. On the afternoon of January 3rd, co-conspirator 4, that is
Jeffrey
that
Clark.
is Clark, spoke with a deputy White House counsel. I think that White House counsel has been identified. I don't have his name.
Patrick Philbin is his name.
Philbin.
Yeah.
The previous month, Philbin had informed the defendant, that was Trump, that there is no option in which you do not leave the White House on January 10th. In other words, you
20th.
lost the election. January 20th. You lost the election. You need to leave.
Yep.
Now the same deputy White House counsel, Philbin, tried to dissuade Jeffrey Clark from assuming the role of acting attorney general. Philbin, and I'm filling in the names here. It says deputy White House counsel and it says co-conspirator 4, but we know who those people are now. Reiterated to Clark that there had not been outcome determinative fraud in the election. In other words, maybe there was fraud in the election, maybe there wasn't, but certainly nothing that was going to change the outcome. Because you can always find one or two cases of fraud across, 240, 250 million people voting, or I should say 120 million people vote, whatever the number is at any given election on either side. But it's non-determinative, non-outcome determinative fraud in the election. And that if the defendant Trump remained in office nonetheless, there would be riots in every major city in the United States. Clark responded, well, Philbin, that's why there's an Insurrection Act. And we had heard a lot of talk of Trump doing this. I mean, so there was there was a plan.
We should explain to people, though, what the Insurrection Act entails, because I don't know if it's necessarily clear just right from the indictment. What that means is that they would deploy troops on U.S. soil to protect, in the way that the Insurrection Act is constructed, to protect the rightful U.S. president from an insurrection, and that would be to quell it. That is what they were planning on doing. So in response to, or at least floating or considering. So in response to the White House counsel saying, Deputy White House counsel Philbin saying that there would be riots in response to Trump remaining in power illegally, he's saying we would use the military to crush protests.
That's what we got the military for.
And then but yeah, I mean, Trump, he just didn't know what he was doing. He just didn't.
I'm just doing my free speech.
He's just shooting from the hip, right?
And keep in mind, I mean, there's obviously a conspiracy afoot, because the Insurrection Act, it's not just the use of the Insurrection Act, right? It's everything that would need to have been done to require them to use the Insurrection Act. And that's what Clark was going to participate in as well. Clark was going to participate in finding the fake, finding that the real electors were illegitimate, finding that there was fraud in Georgia and there was fraud in Michigan and there was fraud in Philadelphia, et cetera, et cetera. That was the plan. As far as the military deciding that they were going to participate in that plan, this is from Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker's book, I Alone Can Fix It, Donald Trump's Catastrophic Final Year. On January 6th, a mob of Trump supporters, many of whom had gathered for the president's fiery speech outside the White House, invaded the Capitol, vandalizing the halls of government and forcing a joint session of Congress into hiding. After the deadly invasion, Milley, this is the former chief of staff, stressed that come hell or high water, there will be a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th, one senior official said in the book. We've got an aircraft. Our landing gear is stuck. We've got one engine and we're out of fuel. We've got to land this bad boy. I don't know why all these military people have to talk like they're in a movie.
Well, I mean,
Milley, a bad movie, leading a January 14th military drill in advance of Biden's inauguration, reportedly said, here's the deal, guys. These guys are Nazis. They're Boogaloo boys. They're Proud Boys. These are the same people we fought in World War II. Everyone in this room, whether you're a cop, whether you're a soldier, we're going to stop these guys to make sure we have a peaceful transfer of power. We're going to put a ring of steel around this city and the Nazis aren't getting in. Earlier, apparently, in regard to January 6th, they may try, but they're not going to effing succeed, Milley said of a possible government takeover in conversation with his closest deputies, according to the book. You can't do this without the military. You can't do it without the CIA and the FBI. We're the guys with the guns, he said. The general, having listened to Trump spread an array of baseless conspiracy theories and false claims of fraud throughout the final weeks of his term, had drawn parallels with the rise of Nazism in the 20th century Germany, the book said. This is a Reichstag moment, Milley told aides in early January, according to the book, the gospel of the Fuhrer. So it's not hard to imagine that had Trump picked a different, Joint Chiefs of Staff, if Mike Pence had been able to be convinced by Jack Eastman, who he certainly was hoping to be convinced. Again, you don't keep, it's been reported many times. Pence had Eastman in his office for 6 hours?
Yeah.
A couple of days before the thing. You don't do that unless you're asking for someone to convince me how this is going to work. Because
it's in his interest. They say that in the indictment. Of course, it's in Pence's interest to remain in power.
It was, but he was clearly looking for a way to do this. And when it was clear that he couldn't do it without being on the hot seat, then I think he just he chickened out. I mean, I think that's why Trump basically called him reportedly the P word, as it were.
It's a risk-benefit analysis, and
Yep.
Trump had given them Supreme Courts. He'd given them enough, and it's like, you know what? Hey, the alarm's been ringing. Maybe we should make our getaway now.
Yeah, right.
Here is Donald Trump speaking to the press after he pled not guilty to the charges around him on January 6th.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024 election?
All right, there you have it. There you have it.
Aside from, the sort of boilerplate stuff that you would imagine from Donald Trump, the Washington stuff is sort of interesting, and I don't think that is knee jerk on his part. I mean, maybe the hyperbole. It's hard to imagine there's been a lot of decay in the past 24 months that he's been gone from office.
And I was unaware
30
that
month, a lot of decay.
He had jurisdiction over the city of Washington, D.C. In that way, or like, is he doing street cleaning?
Exactly. The point is, though, is this is all, they are in political mode here. And there's two things that they are going to push. One is that he can't get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. And they're building the premises for that. And the premises for that is because Washington is a decrepit place with decrepit people who hate him because he's calling out how decrepit their city is.
And they might look like that judge, by the way. They might look like the judge who's overseeing his case. I mean, there are many black people that are like Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, the judge who is overseeing this case. Like the racist attacks are going to start coming.
Oh, I think we're already seeing it. I think the attacks on Washington, D.C. are coded words. There's going to be undoubtedly in a city like Washington, D.C. with such a significant black population, there's going to be undoubtedly a significant portion of the jury that is going to be black, and they're going to wait until that conviction comes in. But they're going to be building this case and building their case, which is, this is just black people who are attacking Donald Trump. I mean, he is already in the mode of blaming it on black people. It is, if you were even remotely sentient during his campaign in 2016, if you were remotely sentient as a human being when he was president, whenever Donald Trump needs to pull a lever because he's feeling like his poll numbers are down or he's in trouble, that lever is always racial resentment. However, before they get to that, right now they're just laying the groundwork, right? Washington, D.C., a decrepit, gross, almost like a third world country, almost like it's, and before they get there, what they need to do is begin to provide an argument for their people to believe that he is innocent of these charges. And the way they're going to do that is by purposefully or not purposely understanding what these charges are and why there are claims within the indictment that Trump lied. These charges, there are 4 charges. They involve 3 of them conspiracy. They are based upon essentially 3 U.S. laws. 18 U.S.C. 371, a conspiracy to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 election by using knowingly false claims of election fraud to obstruct the federal government function by which those results are collected, basically staying in the way of the Electoral College. The 18 USC 1512, the purpose of the conspiracy was to corruptly obstruct the vote certification. So that's literally interfering with what Congress was supposed to do. 18 USC 241, the purpose of the conspiracy was to prevent people's votes from being counted, particularly in the swing states. And then there's just a sort of run-of-the-mill obstruction charge, if you will. So you got defrauding the United States, a conspiracy to deprive citizens the right to vote, and the conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and then the actual obstruction of that official proceeding. So 3 conspiracy counts and 1 just obstruction charge. The way the conspiracy counts work is that you need to be in cahoots with 1 or more persons, and you don't even need to be sitting in the room with them working out what the details are. It is you all must share the same goal, and your actions are the actions you take are all in pursuit of this goal, which is criminal.
Yeah. And to add to that point, people might be wondering, why are these co-conspirators not necessarily being named yet? Why aren't charges being filed against the 6 co-conspirators? And the explanation is that they want to get Trump first, and then those will come, because the trial against Trump would get bogged down if it becomes intertwined essentially with these other cases, and they're trying to avoid that. And they're streamlining it as well, because those 3 conspiracy counts that you mentioned, the accusations can apply to all 3. So
Yes.
It's fairly straightforward from a legal perspective.
And we're going to, and I want to talk about that point about what Smith is doing to streamline these cases, because he's not just streamlining this one. He's streamlining, he is working, it seems to me, across all of the cases that are existing, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But staying on this point, here is Trump attorney John Lauro. And this is, we're getting a hint of what their defense will be.
Being done in secret. There's nothing being hidden. There's no
They're
deceit.
hanging it all. Yeah, John, they're hanging it all, or a lot of it, on the supposed conversation between Pence and Trump that Pence took contemporaneous notes of, where Trump said, "You're too honest," I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, you're just too honest. But I mean, to me, that's just a throwaway line. That doesn't prove anything. But man, they're hanging a lot on that one phrase.
Good luck. I'm ready for them at trial. I can't wait. But something about the conversations between Mr. Pence and Mr. Trump. President Trump was getting advice from an esteemed constitutional scholar as to an array of options that he could take in light of the discrepancies and what was going on in 2020. Those discrepancies were well known, and they were being litigated. Professor Eastman laid out a series of options that were discussed with Vice President Pence. Vice President Pence disagreed on certain issues, but ultimately what President Trump said is, let's go with option D. Let's just halt, let's just pause the voting and allow the state legislatures to take one last look and make a determination as to whether or not the elections were handled fairly. That's constitutional law. That's not an issue of criminal activity.
John, August 28th is.
Okay. So what he's trying to start to build there is to claim that Trump legitimately thought that there was the election was stolen, and he was just simply following the advice of an esteemed lawyer, and that's why he did what he did. But this stuff is not relevant to convicting Donald Trump on these charges. Here is Bill Barr, Donald Trump's old buddy, basically saying that stuff doesn't matter. I mean, it's probably untrue, but that stuff doesn't matter Because what's really more important is when Trump not just said that you're too honest, Mike Pence, but that Trump then lied about where Mike Pence was on this. In fact, Lauro just admitted in that conversation that Pence disagreed with Trump. But Trump went out and said, Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. Mike Pence agrees with me. And that's the lying. Trump knew that Pence's position was not there. Lauro just admitted it for him. Pence knew that you don't need to prove multiple lies, but this is just one in service of doing these things. So even if Trump genuinely believed that the election was stolen, and even if Trump genuinely believed that the advice he was getting was legitimate, it's all the subsequent lies to carry out his plan and to add his part to the conspiracy associated with what ultimately would be a defrauding of the United States, would be preventing people's votes from being counted, stopping the proceedings. That's where he will be convicted. But here's Bill Barr.
Trump's attorneys are saying, and they're also saying that he was just exercising his First Amendment right here. Do you think that's a valid argument in your view?
No, I really don't think that's a valid argument because, as the indictment says, they're not attacking his First Amendment right. He can say whatever he wants. He can even lie. He can even tell people that the election was stolen when he knew better. But that does not protect you from entering into a conspiracy. All conspiracies involve speech, and all fraud involves speech. So, free speech doesn't give you the right to engage in a fraudulent conspiracy.
Yeah, that's important because, we'll pull this up in the indictment, right, where they literally head off this argument right away. But I just wanted to, Trump's lawyer said a few things there, that the options were being litigated. That's a very rosy way to portray because the indictment lays it out, that every single, here it is, state and federal courts, the neutral arbiters responsible for ensuring the fair and even-handed administration of election laws, rejected every outcome determinative post-election lawsuit filed by the defendant, his co-conspirators and allies, providing the defendant real-time notice that his allegations were meritless. That is the part of it. And then he also, to your point, it's not just about that conversation with Pence as well. It is both the Eastman of pressuring Pence and that effort, but there was a dual track being pushed forward by that guy Chesebro and the fake elector scheme, which they don't even want to contend with whatsoever, really. Pressuring those electors and also pressuring state legislatures, which is well documented. Go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, for the charge to prove that Trump and his co-conspirators, and from Empty Wheel, attempted to use deceit to pretend that Trump had won the 306 electoral college votes. So the point is, Donald Trump may have believed in his heart of hearts that he won. I don't believe that's the case, but let's just stipulate that he did. The point is that he lied and defrauded en route to trying to get himself back to power. Just because you think your cause is just doesn't mean that you can engage in a criminal conspiracy.
I have the right answer just because I didn't do the actual work to find it that way. I put the right answer there.
Yeah.
And for proving that Trump and his co-conspirators attempted to use deceit to pretend that Trump won 306 electoral college votes rather than Joe Biden, this is what they could show. And that's why they're talking about all of Trump's lying in the indictment. It's not because he lied about believing what he believed. It's because he lied in pursuit of a goal. In that goal was part of a criminal conspiracy. But to back that up, when Rudy Giuliani admitted to Rusty Bowers, that was a guy from Arizona, that they had no evidence to back their claims, that's a lie in the conspiracy. They all share in that lie, incidentally. Eastman admitting to Mike Pence his claims about the Electoral College Act were untested, and his admission to Greg Jacob that Supreme Court would reject them also goes to the lying that's associated with the attempt to get to that goal. Trump's description of Sidney Powell's claims is crazy that were reported. So he knew these claims were crazy. Jeffrey Clark's attempts to deceive his bosses about what he was doing with Trump. When Jeffrey Clark was going around Jeffrey Rosen and other people at the DOJ to meet with Trump to set up him getting appointed acting a DOJ. And then, we can go with the Insurrection Act. That's also, lies
Scary.
associated with the conspiracy. Kenneth Chethrow's admission that the fake electorals in several states could not comply with the law. Again, another example of either a lie or a fraud that was pushed in pursuit of this conspiratorial goal, if you will. They did this in terms of the vote certification, the attacks on the electors, the counters in Georgia, those women. This is all part of that conspiracy.
And it's the conspiracy that's the key. Bill Barr mentioned it there, right? But the main thing I'm hearing from the Trump side is that this is an attack on Trump's free speech. If every crime, for the most part, that is pre-planned involves some method of communication. It's not the communication necessarily that is going to be the crime. And the indictment, again, let's just let's put this up here. It goes to great lengths to on the second page here. It says the defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful...
Before we get to this part, wait a second.
Yeah,
I just want to make a point about that first sentence. So in other words, there's a reason why they didn't charge him with inciting the riots.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they didn't want to get into that sort of murky area where someone could raise a First Amendment claim.
Exactly.
So they're basically stipulating that. He had every right to go up and give a speech and say this election was stolen. He had every right to do that. They're conceding that.
Which is incredible because but you're hearing that argument still being used as from the Trump defense, which is completely made moot by this one paragraph. There's a purposeful conflation by some people, and then there's just a sort of an ignorance conflation by others. And then go ahead, keep reading. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. Indeed,
that happened all over the place.
Yeah, indeed.
That happened all over the place. They challenged it. They were 5 states. And they were laughed out of the courts in almost every circumstance.
Yes, they were for whatever. For the dozens that they attempted. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. I mean, putting that out front is important. I'm no legal scholar or expert. But for me, this is very well done.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the guy knows what he's doing. And then what it is, the whole point is, he did illegal things in pursuit of a goal that, by definition, at that point was illegal. He exhausted all the legal mechanisms. And then it was in the course of conspiring with other people to still overturn the election. And part of that involved obstruction of congressional duties, essentially, that he conspired to overturn. And again, to defraud the United States and to deny the people's vote. And that's like an old Reconstruction law that was deployed at that time, when the KKK attempted to either prevent people from voting or have their votes disqualified, illegal. And Bill Barr, we should also say, in that same interview, went on to say he thinks that Jack Smith has more that he's going to lay out. But before we open up the phones, I want to just cover one other thing that I think is important to talk about. And Emma touched on this as to why the other conspirators are not being tried at this moment. I'm sure part of it gives them an opportunity to sort of cut deals if they want. But I think the real reason is exactly what Emma said, which is Smith wants this to sail through. And we saw at the hearing that took place yesterday, Trump there was a window in which the magistrate said, when are we going to have your pretrial hearing? And Trump took the outer, prosecutors took the earliest date. Trump took the latest one, August 28th. Trump's going to try and stall this. And what Jack Smith is doing the opposite. He's going to try and expedite it. Alvin Bragg has already said that he will defer to this prosecution. So he will ask his judge to push their case. That one I think is scheduled for March, maybe. And yes. And we still haven't heard the Georgia case yet, but that prosecutor has also said that she will defer to this specific federal case that Jack Smith has on January 6th. And then there's the documents case, which is down in Florida with Cannon. And Jack Smith last week seemed to slow the whole thing down by adding a superseding indictment and adding a third defendant, that guy Oliveira, I think his name was, who was the guy who went in with the tapes. And what that did is it basically set that prosecution, which I think was set for May. It set that back probably a month or 2 months. So essentially what Jack Smith managed to do, one case that he was involved with, already had heard, the state and local prosecutors who had indicted Trump have already said that they would defer. He's basically cleared the docket. So there is nothing else inhibiting this case. And it is more than likely that this is going to go to trial sometime, I don't know, in mid to late spring. I don't know what happens if he gets convicted. There's going to be an appeal. I don't know if that appeal will be delayed at all or what, but this is a serious situation, and Trump could be facing jail time for this stuff.
Up to 20 years.
Yep.
This is the big one. This is the real one, right? And I think we've been...
The Georgia one, I think, is also pretty intense,
totally.
Too.
But the biggest one so far, and I think the people want to put the electoral consequences to the fore in some of this, and that's a separate conversation. We don't really know how that's going to pan out. But the convention is in July, and I also just want to point this out too, that this should have happened years ago because Merrick Garland just chose not to do anything about this. The only reason that this happened was because the January 6th committee was so effective at gathering evidence that Biden was kind of put into a position where it was the right thing to appoint a special counsel. And good on Jack Smith for doing this, I think, fairly quickly, less than a year really from the start of the investigation, or around a year if I have it down correctly. But an example of where the ball was completely dropped. If Trump is the threat to democracy that a lot of the Democrats want to say that he is, you would have wanted to prosecute this as soon after he left office when January 6th happened. We lost a lot of time. And that might benefit Biden electorally if Trump is the nominee, but I don't think if we're talking about a threat to democracy like this, that's not something you really want to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, and I think the electoral stuff, though, at this point, I think is going to dictate Trump's defense, because I don't think there's any scenario where Trump is in jail by the time of the election. And so the election, and it's been reported now that like goal number one with getting elected is to not go to jail for Donald Trump. And that means
that dynamic is known enough for Tim Heidecker to have done an entire film about that, right? Like that movie he did about like the rats, and when he was running for office mainly to avoid legal jeopardy.
Right. I mean, that dynamic, of course, that exists. But I mean, it's been reported that like his top advisors are saying like he's got to win the presidency to stay out of jail. And the idea being that he gets into the presidency and the first thing he does is basically say like, okay, guys, we have other priorities besides putting me in jail. We're not going to fight that.
Let's turn the page.
I think
let's turn the page.
Turn the page. But the point is, though, is that what we're going to see in the context of the defense is the defense is going to be less about getting him acquitted from this trial, from these cases, because I think he must know he doesn't have a good chance at getting acquitted. So we're going to see the defense is actually going to be one that is structured around what's going to get him the most votes. What's going to bring out his people the most? That's why I think we're going to see a lot of questioning of the race of the judge, the race of the jurors, the
it's so
race
unfair.
of the city in which they are. Yes, I think that is going to be a huge part of this. There was a poll, half Republicans, this is from Reuters, yesterday. About half of Republicans would not vote for Donald Trump if he were convicted of a felony. This is specifically, he's been charged with these two other things, but this poll ended before his court appearance. I don't know why that would change anything. They asked respondents that they would vote for Trump for president next year if he was convicted of a felony crime by a jury. Among Republicans, 45% said they would not vote for him, more than the 35% who said they would. The rest said they didn't know. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. I think the numbers are going to be, there's going to be a majority of Republicans, without a doubt, that's going to vote for Donald Trump. It's not going to be 45% said they would not vote for him. 35% said they would. 45% of Republicans are not going to vote against Donald Trump in a general election.
Yeah.
But the race was won, and this race will also be won. Not by the vast majority of Republicans, but it's going to be won in these swing states. And it's going to be run, one amongst like whatever these 6 states are. It's going to be Georgia and Arizona and Nevada and Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And it's going to be won by 10, 20,000 votes, 30,000 votes max in varying degrees, maybe 50,000 in one state. It's going to be won in those states. And you're talking about states where if they're purplish states, the Republicans there are, they probably hang out with more Democrats or they're exposed to more Democrats. Not necessarily always the case. You get like some very rural areas and some very urban areas, but those suburbs. Mm-hmm. And this is where it could inhibit Donald Trump. But again, this is relevant only because, and we can't know what's going to happen. As far as we know, both nominees could be incapacitated to run at that point. I mean, who knows? But the point is, this is going to give us an indication of how Donald Trump is going to run starting right now. And he is going to figure out a way of synthesizing, Colin Kaepernick and essentially the jurors and the judge in this race. I mean, this is how it's going to happen. Remember when he did this with immigration? I can't get a break from a Mexican judge. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the way it's going to work. And people should be prepared for this. This is going to be extremely ugly. Not that it was never not ugly with Donald Trump, but he is fighting for his life now, essentially, in his mind. So this is where we're at. And again, I mean, ultimately the electoral stuff, like Emma says, is we'll have time to deal with that. But this is really important that this precedent be set. Both, A, you can't storm the Capitol at a time where we've seen, with weapons and in a violent fashion. And
they
beat
had
up
weapons
cops.
stored in safe spots. They did a reconnaissance pre-insurrection planning period where they toured some of those militia groups. I'm forgetting exactly which one. Might have been the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers, where they toured the congressional halls. I mean, like downplaying this because of your perception of like liberals as being cringy could not be it's the definition of shallow political analysis. This is a really massive thing that happened. Massive and scary.
And Matt makes this point a lot, but I think it's also like, it is important to like, it's really important for political leaders when they commit grave like miscarriages of justice like this and break laws actually be shown to get punished for what they do. Like for there to actually be some semblance of accountability. Like this happens in other countries where people are like, people on the right always act as if this is something that never happens. I mean, Janine Áñez in Bolivia was literally imprisoned for what she did. Like, and that's as a show. Yes, exactly. Or Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland for whatever the case around that might be. This does happen because it also is a show of like, there actually has to be some sort of systemic recourse if you are in a position of power to actually be punished for it, and for people to understand, as you guys are saying, that there is some measure and mode of accountability for doing this.
Well, yeah, crimes against democracy like that should absolutely be prosecuted. And it's wild to see, like, actually the threat to democracy is any sort of legal a look into a guy saying we're going to do martial law to steal this election.
Yeah, that is nuts. And again, the idea is that we haven't prosecuted presidents before. So is the idea, I mean, that position is completely indefensible because eventually we have to, if we're going to.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to just, there's no way to retroactively go back in history and prosecute all the presidents that should have been prosecuted. The only way you're going to get accountability is not to go backwards and do that, as much as I would like to. Although it would be nice if the International Criminal Court wouldn't let George Bush go anywhere. But the bottom line is you start here. And if you genuinely care about equal accountability for Bush and Clinton and Obama and Bush 1 and Reagan, if you want all those presidents to be held to account, you got to start somewhere. And this is pretty low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And if you can't do this one, let's put it this way. If you cannot prosecute, and it's not appropriate to prosecute Donald Trump in this instance, you can basically say there's no opportunity to prosecute any president for anything going forward.
Yeah, free pass. If I'm a president after Trump and he gets off with it, I am feeling nice about that.
Of course.
That logic is like some derivation of the student debt argument. Well, it's like, well, you didn't forgive my debt, so we're not forgive anybody else's. You didn't prosecute Obama or the Reagan or Bush, so we're not going after Trump. It's like that's not how progress or good things, like how progress works or how good things happen. You're supposed to learn from things in the past, not repeat them.
All right. Well, I guess
it's biased unless you repeat the same thing you complained about.
Yeah.
We did not take phone calls, but I did predict that we would not take phone calls.
What?
And in fact, not only did we not take phone calls in the first hour, we're well into the second hour. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to head to the fun half, and I promise you, calls right from the beginning, except for after we play the Rudy Giuliani thing, so that we can talk about his sexual harassment suit, which I think because of that suit is in existence, I have a feeling that he was more inclined to sort of like say, screw you, Donald Trump. I've got my own problems.
I mean, there's only so much processing power and bandwidth that guy can have at this point.
Oh, man.
Exactly. I'm running out of shoe polish for my head. And so I'm going to have to. All right, let's just do this. We might as well, since we're here.
Yeah.
Here's Donald Trump. Here's former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani And here he is taking offense to the fact that Pence called him a crackpot lawyer. This is pretty funny.
To go to court and try cases myself. So I'm a real trial lawyer, not make believe like a lot of these people. I once got a congressman to break down on the witness stand and confess. So I really know what I'm doing, and to be described as what did Pence say? Oh, I don't think he's ever been in a courtroom, and he went to a law school nobody even knows. I mean, that guy. I mean, I thought before this all happened that he was a really good guy, but too weak to be president. I always worried about him following Trump because I would see him with his wife having something around his neck every night and walking around. She doesn't let him go to she lets him go to the bathroom by himself. That's about it. But imagine that skunk doing what he did today. I mean, he if you can't separate Trump from the First Amendment issue here, then you're just not a good person. This is not about Trump. If this were being done to my worst enemy, I would be fighting the case for them.
Yeah.
It's so high school. Like, I love how he's now getting older and his brain's kind of, when you like in horror movies and you see brains like in jars with like fluid, his is just in bourbon. But like, I just like Mike Pence didn't go to the same law school as me. I'm in Kappa Kappa Gamma and he's in Alpha Phi, and that sorority is not as good as mine.
I think there's a reason he's doing this. He's got all of these sort of legal problems that have nothing to do with Donald Trump. And he has reportedly had at different times trouble paying for all of these things. And what I see right there is Giuliani basically doing a layup for Donald Trump and saying there's more of this where this came from. Because that was so Trump-esque, his response there, that he's doing that for Donald Trump. And he's doing that for Donald Trump. And Eastman has come out and said, like, well, I'm not participating in any of this. Or I don't anticipate participating in any of this. I think we're going to hear that a lot from all of these co-conspirators. Like, there's almost no way I'm going to speak and cooperate. And I think it is basically a sort of like a suggestion to Donald Trump that, all that PAC money you're spending on your,
pay for my lawyer.
Legal, you might want to spread that around a little bit with some of our legal defense as well. Rudy Giuliani, this is from Jezebel 2 days ago.
Content warning. Okay.
Yes. Not safe for, it's not safe for work. It's really unsafe for anybody who's
It's not safe for us. I mean, we deserve hazard pay for having to hear about this, but
exactly. This is I made everybody in the office sign a form saying that they would not bring charges against me, a waiver for reading this. Just the idea of Rudy Giuliani in and of himself is sort of disgusting. But Jezebel reports on Noelle Dunphy. She is a former assistant to Rudy Giuliani. We've talked about this sexual harassment lawsuit that dropped. I think it was in May. She was seeking legal advice from him because she was in an abusive relationship. And
she was his assistant, and he had promised her a bunch of money.
I think he hired her as an assistant then.
Yeah.
And promised her millions of dollars in wages. And ended up she is alleging that he raped and sexually abused her. And also solicited her help in selling presidential pardons, which I think, if you recall, had been another charge. And I can't remember who was that made it, but made a strikingly similar. I think it was Scott Ritter. I think it was, or somebody got approached by Giuliani selling pardons, and she had basically confirmed that. Anyways, this is I guess they're in discovery, and attorneys for Dunphy on Tuesday filed a motion seeking sanctions against Giuliani for lying, which they presented new alarming evidence to supplement the plaintiff's previous claims. This evidence includes numerous transcripts of audio recordings. We do not have the audio recordings. I think that is a blessing in many respects.
I'd be remixing them to music probably, but you do you.
So I would actually listen. I would listen to that over and over again. In fact, that could be there's your passive income
to Pulp's
plan.
Hardcore.
Some of the transcripts show Giuliani in 2019 telling Dunphy, quote, "I want to own you officially, legally, with a document." Another transcript shows him calling her my daughter and my little girl.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Careful if he says
worse.
my cousin.
Transcripts also show him referring to Dunphy as big tits and saying, "Come here, big tits. Come here, big tits. Your tits belong to me. Give them to me, indiscernible. I want to claim my tits. I want to claim my tits. I want to claim my tits. These are my tits." Others show Julie calling Dunphy my bitch, my whore, and my effing slut at different points. He did not say effing. I don't know why at this point I'm even trying. In 2019, he also tells Dunphy that she's made him sapiosexual.
Oh my God.
I don't know what that word means. I don't know.
That means you
means that you are sexually stimulated by smart people.
Yeah, knowledge havers.
Oh, okay. For example, he says, "I can't think about you or I get hard. Even if I think about how smart you are, I'll get hard. I never think about a girl
That's
being
the Viagra.
smart. I never think about a girl being smart. If you told me a girl was smart, I would often think she's not attractive."
Well, I mean, at least we're being honest.
Yeah, we're getting somewhere now.
Yeah.
The breakthrough.
I mean, he wants them to be little girl. Jesus.
I mean,
so he can get hard for her even though she's smart.
Well,
I mean,
great job.
that's what we call growth.
Or that's what we call pharmaceuticals.
I've gotten so much more mature.
I'll just say,
like, suit against Giuliani, she alleges the former New York City mayor denied her wages by repeatedly claiming he had to hire her under the table because of his ongoing divorce. Dunphy claims Giuliani promised her $2 million wages, but ultimately paid her just $12,000 over 2 years.
That's close enough.
And to entice her to accept the job as assistant in the first place, the suit states Giuliani offered to provide pro bono legal representation of Ms. Dunphy in connection with an ongoing dispute arising from an abusive ex-partner.
I mean, you know what was going through his mind is,
America's mayor.
This woman is a victim. I'm going to further victimize her. Like, it's going to be me.
Yeah. Well, I mean.
And I would just say, like, the interview we just played where his brain goes to thinking of Mike Pence on a leash and urination, like, kind of maybe validating this a little bit.
He is, like, look up the word skeevy in the dictionary, and there'll be a picture of, like, Rudy Giuliani with spittle on his dentures. We didn't even get to the other part.
Which part?
The Jewish penis part.
Oh, I didn't see that part.
Whoopsie.
No, that's not in this. I didn't get the.
I will read this to you.
Okay, you read it.
Okay, here we go. I don't know why I volunteered this.
I don't know why I skipped over that.
Okay, go to the. I mean, scroll up, Bradley. We'll go in like. Okay, this here. You want to do it?
Yeah, go ahead. You do it.
This evidence includes numerous transcripts of audio recordings of disturbing comments from Giuliani about Dunphy, as well as Jewish people, Matt Damon and Michael Bloomberg, certified by a court reporting agency.
He added that. He made anti-Semitic jokes about Jewish men's genitals, but I didn't see what the joke itself was.
He basically said, like, Italian guys have large members because they commit a lot of affairs.
Yeah, because they have a lot of
Jewish
sex,
guys
so they
don't.
grow, and Jewish guys don't have sex, so they're small.
After they're married. And so, like, I'd say, like, yeah, probably not the best understanding of natural
biology.
selection.
Here we go. Here we go. According to this transcript. All right, he says he was.
I mean, we don't have the actual transcript.
Matt Damon is also 5'2", eyes are blue, coochie coochie coo. Okay, I mean that's him saying he's gay.
I don't have that in mind.
I saw it on Twitter. I don't think it's in this.
I went to another one on Insider here.
Oh,
It just-
According to her other transcripts, Giuliani claimed Jewish men have small penises compared to Italians. Giuliani is Italian and complained about Jewish religious holidays. He was particularly irked about Passover, a holiday where Jews celebrate the exodus from slavery in Egypt, as recounted in the Torah.
Yeah, part of see what's the big deal. I think that's what he said, basically.
Well,
So
that
just
was.
the point
I'm
is
sorry. I just want to say to all those people who are canceling their membership here. Thanks for the support over the years, and again, we apologize for ruining your life.
As vile as these guys are in public, they're even more disgusting in private.
Sam, what do you think about this quote? Jews, they want to go through that freaking Passover all the time. Man, oh man, get over the Passover. It was like 3,000 years ago. Okay, the Red Sea parted, big deal. Not the first time that happened.
When was the other
Any
time?
comment on that?
I mean, there's some truth to it. I'm not gonna.
Look, yeah.
That's the one part where I think, like, maybe.
Yeah, let's take the arguments on the face. Let's not do ad hominem.
Right. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. I'm quite convinced we just lost a lot of members and support after delivering that transcript from Rudy Giuliani's lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. And so we're going to need to make up for all those people who have decided they can never, ever hear our voices again. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the half free of commercials, but you also get the fun half, and you can IM the show via the app at majorityapp.com. That app is free, of course, for everybody, but the IM feature is for members. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Emma.
Just like the Red Sea parted, get over it.
ESPN now, or are you?
What'd you say?
Are you going to be able to talk about ESPN now, or are you going to have?
I don't know. I'll get it together.
The guy got hung on a cross. Get over it. Imagine.
It's been thousands of years.
About that, actually.
Yeah.
I had a Jesus bit. I did the Stitches Comedy Riot in like 1990, and Cam Neely was one of the judges. And I had a bit about, leaving law school and, talking about Jesus, my relation with my father over law school and Jesus' relationship with his father about leaving carpentry to become Messiah. And it was it wasn't particularly great bit, but Cam Neely wrote as criticism, because he got to see what the judges said, need more current stuff.
More current than Jesus'
the Jesus
crucifixion.
stuff was at that point, 1900 years old. So he had a point. Emma, ESPN.
Yes. Arian Foster interview. If you haven't seen it already, what are you doing? Come on, go check that out. We spoke about the running back labor situation at length. His experiences as a professional, one of the great running backs over the past 25 years, came on ESPN. So pretty cool.
Spread that around to people too. That's a great one for sports fans to get introduced to Emma's show.
And he's also as thoughtful as possible. He's a great guy. So anyway, check it out. I'm a big fan. I was a fan even before, when I first got into football. He's cool.
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy where it's like, oh man, he has good politics. That's a very big victory for us.
Yes, right, exactly, right.
I don't know what's making Emma blush more, that interview or the stuff that she read with Rudy Giuliani.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm blushing over the interview. I'm excited about the interview.
Right.
You're blushing
excited.
when you're saying, watching you run was like skating on ice.
All right, relax.
Matt.
On Left Reckoning this week, we had Darna Noor on, a Guardian a climate writer, and I also got really upset at Jimmy Dore, who really is taking to criticizing 20-year-old climate activists. That's like a new bit now. He's tired of just criticizing the Democrats. Let's get after 20-year-old young women who don't. He
did that with the Starbucks workers, right?
He did that with the Starbucks workers
in Kentucky, was it? This woman who spoke at the climate got up in that press conference.
Yeah, she said that seemed fake because basically they thought the Democrats might be preferable to be in power than the Republicans if you're doing climate action. That means she supports imperialism and Oh, and they also got upset that Greta Thunberg didn't use an opportunity to berate Zelensky. It's just
Wait, say the other thing about the conspiracy about her height.
Oh yeah, they also thought it's sus that Greta Thunberg hasn't grown since she arrived on the the sort of global stage. That she's sort of stunted in her growth, and that's raised an eyebrow for some reason.
But what is the theory behind that?
I have no idea.
I mean, it's like
she's a psyop, obviously.
There is a movie called Orphan where there's a person who's it's a horror film. She's like 45 posing as a child. And like, I literally think that's the theory that they're working with.
That's like the closest one. But then in researching that, I found out that he had to apologize to a different climate activist 10 months ago because she went on stage with Bill Gates and said billionaires shouldn't exist. And Jimmy did one video saying, hey, good that you do that. But one, Bill Gates gave you a award and you shouldn't have taken that. And two, don't laugh when you're saying Bill Gates billionaires shouldn't exist.
Stuff.
And it turns out that actually she had to email him asking for a correction because she wasn't given an award by the Gates Foundation, and Jimmy Dore said, well, I don't know why you're so concerned that I said you got an award from Bill Gates, even though you're a critic of philanthrocapitalism, but maybe you should just thank me for covering your story. Like he's a real, him and Kurt Metzger, garbage.
He's a piece of garbage.
How old is this girl?
They're all under 25.
Cool.
All right, folks. Emma's charred buns. You lost some members today, but you learned that Italian members are massive, so it's a wash. See you in the fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflakes says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what?
What?